The Discovery, Part 1. The Galactic Research Institute hung like a crystalline snowflake against the velvet darkness of space, its transparent sections catching and refracting starlight in mesmerizing patterns. Dr. Elena Santos stood at the observation deck, her breath fogging the quantum glass as she took in the view. After 15 years of research on Earth, she was finally here, the most advanced xenobiological research facility in the known galaxy. Dr. Santos, welcome aboard. The voice came from behind her, a melodious tone that seemed to ripple through the air. Elena turned to face Director Vashera, a Luminian whose bioluminescent skin cast a soft blue glow across the deck. The director's fluid form shifted and swirled, a sign of excitement in their species. "Thank you for this opportunity, Director," Elena replied, unconsciously straightening her lab coat. "I studied your work on cross-species genetic adaptation for years. As we have studied yours," Vashera's light patterns shifted to a deeper blue. "Your research on extremophile bacteria in Earth's deep-sea volcanic vents was illuminating. Though I must admit, we were surprised when you volunteered to work in Sector 7. Elena's eyes narrowed slightly. She'd heard the whispers, seen the sidelong glances from other scientists when she'd submitted her application. Sector 7 was where the Institute kept its most dangerous secrets, the place where they studied things that made even advanced civilizations nervous. "I've spent my career studying life in extreme conditions," Elena said firmly. "If there's anywhere I belong, it's Sector 7. Vashera's light patterns pulsed in what Elena had learned was their species' equivalent of a thoughtful nod. "Follow me, then. There's something you need to see." They glided through corridors that seemed to shift and change, quantum architecture responding to their presence. Other researchers, beams of gas and crystal, energy, and matter, moved aside respectfully as the director passed. Elena noticed how they kept their distance from her, subtle environmental shields flickering to life as she approached. The security checkpoints became more frequent as they descended deeper into the station. At each one, Vashera's bioluminescence was scanned, and Elena's genetic signature was verified. Finally, they reached a massive door marked with warning symbols from a dozen different species. "Before we enter," Vashera turned to face Elena, their light dimming to almost nothing. "I must ask, are you familiar with the Exodus Protocol?" Elena felt her heart rate quicken. The Exodus Protocol was the stuff of scientific legend, the emergency procedure that had supposedly been used only once in the Institute's 1,000-year history, when an experiment went so catastrophically wrong that an entire research station had to be abandoned. "Yes," she answered carefully. "It's required reading and xenohazard training." "Good." Vashera's light patterns formed complex geometries of concern. "Because what lies beyond this door is why the protocol was created." The door dissolved, revealing a chamber that seemed to drink in light. At its center, suspended in a containment field that made Elena's teeth ache just looking at it, was a small vial of something that seemed to shift between states of matter. 300 years ago, Vashera began, we discovered the ruins of a civilization that had wiped itself out. Among the ruins was this, an engineered nanoplug designed to target and destroy any form of carbon-based life. We call it the Gray Death. Elena stepped closer to the containment field, her scientific curiosity overriding her instinctive caution. The substance in the vial seemed to respond to her presence, swirling more rapidly. "Why show me this?" she asked, though part of her already knew the answer. "Because," Vashera's light patterns turned to a color Elena had never seen before, "we believe Earth's extreme environment might hold the key to understanding it. Your planet's history of survival through multiple extinction events, the remarkable adaptability of your species. We need a human perspective on this project. Dr. Santos, specifically, we need your perspective." Elena watched the swirling death in the vial, thinking of all the times humanity had faced extinction and survived, of all the times nature had tried to kill her species, only to make them stronger. "When do we start?" she asked. Vashera's response was cut off by a sudden alarm. The containment field flickered. just for a moment. But in that moment, Alina saw the substance in the vial respond, reaching out like a living thing toward her. The accident. Part 2. The containment field's failure lasted less than a second, but that was all it took. Alina watched in horrified fascination as a microscopic tendril of the Grey Death slipped through the momentary gap and made contact with her skin. Time seemed to slow as alarms blared and emergency protocols activated around her. Containment breach. Human exposure detected. The station's AI announced with uncharacteristic urgency. Emergency protocols initiated. Sector 7 lockdown in effect. Vashera's bioluminescence flared brilliant white with panic. Medical team to containment chamber Alpha. Priority 1. Get the stasis field. No. Alina interrupted, her voice steady despite the situation. Her years of research experience kicked in as she studied her own hand where the nanoplague had made contact. Wait. The spot where the Grey Death had touched her skin tingled slightly, but nothing more. No pain, no cellular breakdown, none of the catastrophic effects documented in every other exposure case. She could almost feel her body responding, her immune system engaging the threat with the casual efficiency of something that had evolved on a planet that tried to kill it every day. Fascinating, she murmured, pulling out her personal scanner. Director, look at these readings. Vashera hesitated at a safe distance, their light patterns cycling through colors of confusion and disbelief. This is impossible. The Grey Death breaks down all carbon-based life forms. We've seen it destroy everything from simple bacteria to advanced synthetic organisms. You should be dead. Alina finished, a slight smile playing at her lips. Director, do you know what the average human body deals with every day on Earth? Radiation, carcinogens, microscopic parasites, bacteria that eat through metal. We've evolved to handle threats that would devastate most. The medical team burst into the chamber in their containment suits, then stopped short at the sight of Alina, calmly taking readings of her own vital signs. The lead physician, a crystalline being named Dr. Catal, moved forward cautiously. Dr. Santos, please remain still while we check these numbers. Alina interrupted, sending her scanner data to Catal's system. My immune system isn't just fighting off the nanoplague. It's breaking it down. Look at the neutrophil response. The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of scanning equipment as the medical team analyzed the data. Alina could see the moment they realized what they were looking at, their various anatomies displaying universal signs of shock. This is Dr. Catal's crystalline form refracted light in patterns of excitement. Your immune cells are treating the Grey Death like any other invasion. They're not just resistant. They're actively dismantling its structure. Vashera moved closer, their previous caution forgotten in the face of scientific discovery. How is this possible? Alina thought about Earth's history, about the countless threats her species had faced and overcome. We evolved on a planet that's trying to kill us every day. Our bodies learned to adapt to threats that most species never had to face. Think about it. We drink a substance that dissolves rock for pleasure. We deliberately expose ourselves to radiation to get darker skin. We eat plants that would be considered chemical weapons on other worlds as spices. She looked at her hand again, where the spot of contact now showed no sign of the deadliest substance known to galactic science. We're not just survivors, Director. We're the end result of billions of years of evolutionary warfare against everything our planet could throw at us. The implications began to sink in around the room. The Grey Death, the most feared biological weapon in known space, had just met something it couldn't kill: human immune system. Dr. Santos, Vashera's voice held a new note of respect. I believe we need to revise the scope of your research position here. Before Alina could respond, the station's AI interrupted with an urgent announcement. Warning: unauthorized access detected in Sector 7 database. Data breach in progress. Security protocols compromised. Alina met Vashera's gaze, understanding passing between them. Someone had been watching, and now they knew that humans were immune to the deadliest weapon in the galaxy. "Director," Alina said grimly, "I think we have a bigger problem than containment now." Around them, the station's lights began to flicker as system after system reported intrusion attempts. The discovery of human immunity wouldn't stay secret for long, and Alina had a feeling she knew exactly what kind of attention it would attract. The race was on, not just to understand why humans could survive the unsurvivable, but to protect that knowledge from those who would use it for their own ends. As the station's security systems engaged in electronic warfare with the intruders, Alina realized that surviving the Grey Death might have been the easy part. What came next would test not just her immunity, but everything humanity had learned about survival. The Investigation. Part 3. The quarantine lab hummed with activity as researchers from a dozen different species studied the phenomenon they'd dubbed the Santos effect. Alina sat in the center of it all, surrounded by scanning equipment while Vashera and Dr. Ketal conducted their latest round of tests. "Your cellular repair mechanisms are unlike anything we've documented." Ketal's crystalline form sparkled with excitement as they reviewed the latest data. "When faced with the Grey Death, your immune system doesn't just defend. It adapts and counterattacks." Alina watched the holographic display, showing her blood cells systematically dismantling the nanoplague. "On Earth, we have something called the hygiene hypothesis. The idea is that our immune systems evolved to deal with so many threats that they need constant challenges to function properly." "Remarkable." Vashera's light patterns swirled thoughtfully. "But that still doesn't explain how your bodies learn to counter artificial threats like the Grey Death." "Actually, it might." Alina stood up, walking to the main display. "Show me Earth's evolutionary timeline again." The AI projected a detailed history of Earth's various extinction events and survival adaptations. Alina pointed to specific periods. "Look here, the Great Oxidation Event, when oxygen became toxic to most life on Earth. And here, the development of multicellular organisms, despite intense radiation. Every major breakthrough in our evolution came from surviving something that should have killed us." "But the Grey Death isn't natural," Ketal objected. "It was engineered specifically to." A sudden commotion at the lab entrance cut them off. Admiral Xenthar of the Galactic Security Council strode in, flanked by armed guards. The towering insectoid's carapace gleamed under the lab lights as their compound eyes fixed on Alina. "Dr. Santos." Xenthar's mandibles clicked in what Alina had learned was a sign of intense interest. "Your discovery has attracted considerable attention. The Council has concerns." Vashera moved protectively closer to Alina, their bioluminescence shifting to warning patterns. "Admiral, this is a scientific research facility. The Council has no jurisdiction." "The Council has jurisdiction wherever galactic security is concerned," Xenthar interrupted. "And a species immune to the most deadly biological weapon ever created. That certainly concerns us." Alina felt the tension in the room rise. She'd spent enough time studying alien body language to recognize the signs. This wasn't just a casual visit. "With respect, Admiral," she said carefully, "we're conducting medical research here. The potential applications for disease treatment alone could be equally applicable to weapons development." Xenthar finished. "Imagine armies of soldiers immune to any biological weapon. Or worse, imagine if someone found a way to replicate human immunity in other species. That's not what we're." "Dr. Santos." Xenthar's voice softened to what they probably thought was reassuring. "The Council merely wishes to oversee this research. For security purposes, of course." Alina exchanged glances with Vashera and Ketal. They all knew what oversight really meant: control. The Council wanted to control human immunity, to weaponize it, or prevent its weaponization. Maybe both. But before anyone could respond, the lab's sensors began registering unusual readings. The Grey Death sample they'd been studying was acting strangely, its molecular structure shifting in ways they hadn't seen before. "Director," Alina called out, Look at this. The holographic display showed something extraordinary. The nanoplague wasn't just being destroyed by human immune response. It was evolving, attempting to adapt to overcome human defenses. Impossible, Ketal whispered, their crystalline form refracting light in patterns of shock. It's supposed to be inert outside of containment. Unless, Alina's mind raced with the implications, unless it was designed to do exactly this. To evolve, to adapt, to... She stopped, the terrible reality hitting her. Admiral, who did you say you reported our findings to? Xenthar's compound eyes shifted uncomfortably. Only the highest levels of the council, of course. And who exactly sits on the council these days? Alina pressed, though she already suspected the answer. Vashera's light patterns suddenly pulsed with alarm. The Arxos delegation. They joined the council 3 cycles ago. The Arxos, Alina said grimly, who just happened to discover the ruins where the Grey Death was found. The Arxos, whose technological advancements suddenly accelerated after that discovery. The pieces fell into place with horrifying clarity. The Grey Death wasn't just a weapon they'd found. It was a weapon they'd created. And now it was trying to adapt to the one thing it couldn't kill. We need to lock down this facility, Alina declared, already moving to the containment controls. Now. But as alarms began to blare throughout the station, she knew it might already be too late. The game had changed. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about preventing history from repeating itself on a galactic scale. The station's emergency lighting cast everything in a crimson glow as Alina and her team raced against time. The Grey Death sample had begun replicating at an exponential rate, its structure shifting and evolving as it attempted to overcome human immunity. Station-wide alert, the AI announced. Unknown vessels approaching. Energy signatures match Arxos warship configurations. They're not here for a diplomatic visit, Alina muttered, her fingers flying over the holographic controls. She'd spent the last hour reprogramming the containment systems while Vashera and Ketal coordinated the station's defenses. Admiral Xenthar paced nervously, their mandibles clicking rapidly. The Council won't stand for this act of aggression. When I report. They planned this, Alina interrupted, not looking up from her work. The Arxos knew exactly what would happen when humans were exposed to the Grey Death. They've probably been waiting centuries for a species like us to come along. The implications were staggering. The Arxos hadn't just created the Grey Death, they'd engineered it to evolve, to adapt to any resistance it encountered. Human immunity wasn't a surprise to them. It was an opportunity. Multiple breaches detected in outer hull, the AI reported. Arxos boarding parties detected in sectors 3, 4, and 6. Vashera's bioluminescence pulsed with determination. Security teams are engaging, but they're pushing toward this lab. They want the samples. And you, Dr. Santos. Alina nodded grimly. Of course they did. Her blood contained the key to everything. Human immunity, the Grey Death's evolution, the potential for weapons that could reshape the galaxy. Director, she said, making a decision. I need you to evacuate the station. What? Vashera's light patterns swirled in protest. We can't. The Exodus Protocol, Alina insisted. That's what it's for, isn't it? When the situation becomes too dangerous to contain. Ketal's crystalline form dimmed with realization. You're not planning to evacuate, are you? Someone has to stay and make sure the Grey Death doesn't leave this station, Alina replied. She pulled up new schematics on the holographic display. And I think I know how to do it. The others gathered around as she explained her plan. It was desperate, dangerous, and relied heavily on the one thing that had kept humanity alive through countless disasters: adaptability. The Grey Death evolves by analyzing and responding to threats, she explained. Right now, it's trying to overcome human immunity. But what if we give it too much to adapt to? What if we overload its ability to evolve? Understanding dawned in Vashera's light patterns. The station's radiation containment systems. Exactly. Elena brought up the controls for the station's protective shielding. We flood the lab with everything: radiation, extreme temperatures, electromagnetic pulses, toxic compounds. Force it to adapt to so many threats at once that it burns itself out trying to evolve. That's suicide, Xanthar protested. No one could survive that combination off. I'm human, Elena reminded them with a grim smile. Surviving the unsurvivable is what we do. Before anyone could argue further, the lab's outer doors buckled under heavy impact. The Arxos boarding party had arrived. Go, Elena ordered, already initiating the containment override sequences. Get everyone off the station. I'll handle things here. Voshera hesitated, their light patterns expressing complex emotions that human languages had no words for. Elena. Director, she said softly, humanity survived because we learned when to fight and when to run. Right now, you need to run. The others finally nodded, understanding the gravity of the moment. As they rushed to coordinate the evacuation, Elena turned back to her controls. The lab's systems responded to her commands, preparing to unleash a perfect storm of lethal conditions. Through the reinforced windows, she could see the Arxos ships surrounding the station, their weapons primed. They thought they were here to claim the ultimate weapon. Instead, they were about to learn why humans had survived every catastrophe their world had thrown at them. The outer doors began to give way as Elena made her final preparations. She thought about Earth, about all the times her species had faced extinction and emerged stronger, about how every threat, every disaster, every brush with annihilation had shaped them into something uniquely resilient. All right, she whispered, her finger hovering over the final command sequence. Let's see what kills who. The doors burst open, and chaos erupted. The lab erupted into a maelstrom of deadly forces as Elena activated every hazardous system simultaneously. Radiation levels soared, temperature extremes clashed, and electromagnetic pulses sent equipment sparking. The advancing Arxos troops faltered at the threshold, their environmental suits warning of conditions that would kill most life forms instantly. But Elena stood in the center of it all, her body adapting as it had been engineered to do through millions of years of evolution. The gray death sample writhed in its containment field, trying desperately to evolve defenses against the overwhelming assault of lethal conditions. Impressive, came a voice from the doorway. An Arxos commander stepped through, their advanced suit barely protecting them from the chaos. Now we see why your species was chosen. Chosen. Elena's skin burned from the radiation, but her voice remained steady. You engineered the gray death to find us. To find any species strong enough to survive it, the commander corrected. We seeded the galaxy with samples, waiting for someone to prove worthy. And here you are. Humanity, the ultimate survivors. Around them, monitoring systems showed the gray death's molecular structure changing rapidly, trying to adapt to each new threat. But Elena could see what the Arxos couldn't. It was beginning to break down under the strain. You don't understand what makes us strong, Elena said, fighting through the pain as her body worked overtime to repair radiation damage. It's not just our immunity or our adaptability. The commander took another step forward. Then enlighten us. We survived because we learned to work together, Elena explained, watching her monitors carefully. Every time Earth tried to kill us, we shared knowledge, we helped each other, we found solutions as a species. But you, she smiled through gritted teeth, you create weapons and wait for someone else to solve your problems. The gray death's containment field fluctuated as the sample structure began to destabilize. The Arxos commander noticed too late what was happening. Stop this, they demanded. You'll destroy years of research. I already have, Elena replied. Check your readings. The sample isn't just failing to adapt, it's breaking down on a fundamental level. And I've transmitted the formula for its destruction to every research facility in the galaxy. The commander's suit sensors must have confirmed her words because they took a step back. You've ruined everything. No, Elena countered. I've done exactly what humans always do. Found a way to turn destruction into protection. The Gray Death's breakdown sequence can be modified into a universal vaccine. Instead of a weapon that kills everything, you now have a shield that can protect everyone. Warning alarms blared as the sample approached critical instability. The Arxos troops began to retreat, but their commander remained, staring at Elena through their suit's visor. Why? They asked simply. Because that's the real reason humanity survived. Elena explained, her vision beginning to blur from the extreme conditions. Not because we were stronger or tougher, but because we learned to turn our struggles into solutions for everyone. The containment field finally failed completely, but by then the Gray Death had destabilized beyond recovery. Emergency systems activated throughout the station, beginning decontamination procedures. Station containment restored, the AI announced. Threat level decreasing. Medical teams en route. Elena heard the sound of running feet. Vashera and Kital returning with reinforcements from the Galactic Council. She'd known they wouldn't really leave her behind. As security forces surrounded the Arxos commander, Elena leaned against a burned-out console, her body already beginning to heal from the ordeal. Vashera rushed to her side, their bioluminescence expressing both concern and pride. The evacuation, Elena asked weakly. Never completed, Vashera admitted. We transmitted the situation to the Council instead. Real-time proof of both the Arxos deception and the potential for turning the Gray Death into a force for healing. Elena nodded, satisfied. Already, she could see Kital's team beginning to analyze the breakdown sequence, preparing to transform a weapon of mass destruction into a shield for all life. Dr. Santos, Admiral Exenthor approached, their mandibles arranged in what she recognized as an expression of deep respect. The Council has seen everything. They're calling for an emergency session to discuss the implications of your discovery. Good, Elena said, straightening up despite her exhaustion, because I have a lot to tell them about survival, adaptation, and the real meaning of strength. As medical teams worked to stabilize the lab and security forces led away the Arxos conspirators, Elena looked out at the stars through the station's windows. Somewhere out there, Earth continued its endless dance through space, still trying its best to kill all life on its surface. And somewhere out there, other species would face their own extinction-level threats. But now, thanks to humanity's unique relationship with survival, they wouldn't have to face those threats alone. Director, Elena turned to Vashera. I believe we have some research papers to write. The director's light patterns shifted to show amusement. About turning the deadliest weapon in the galaxy into a universal protection system. Yes, I believe that might be worth publishing. Elena smiled, feeling her body's natural healing processes already repairing the damage from her ordeal. Humanity had not only survived the unsurvivable, they'd found a way to help others do the same. After all, that was what humans did best. Turn their hardships into hope for everyone. End.